and the final episode of season 1.
So exciting.
And I have Charlene Dinger here as a guest today, and I'm very fortunate because she's a busy lady, especially with competition season and all of the things that have been going on as the dance season is wrapping up for the summer.
Yes.
So I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to be here.
Likewise.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell everyone about your work because it's very interesting, because we're talking about how you're merging your paths between dance, yoga, and psychology. And a lot of people would say, well, yeah, if you really know about dance and yoga, it's all about that mind-body connection.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. It's all movement, it's all breath, it's all psychological if you break it down, and like as I kind of recently started studying psychology, everything just resonated so well. And then when I did my yoga teacher training, all of those things were so recognizable for me, and they were very easy for me to connect to right away.
Yeah.
And so then I think just kind of being able to dive into those things and start merging all of my passions together. I'm just really starting to explore that now, but it's really exciting because I feel like with the experience that I've had as a dancer and now as a teacher, an adjudicator, an educator, being able to combine and blend all of my passions to be able to sort of help young dancers, and then to be able to connect my knowledge and my experience as a dancer into teaching adults yoga. It's really exciting, and it feels very organic.
Because everything seems to be in alignment now.
Absolutely. It's starting to get there. It's starting to all kind of fall into place, and just new ideas are starting to spark for me now as I kind of think about like, okay, well, how can I take these things that I know as a dancer, and all of the alignment things that I'm learning now as a yoga teacher, the spirituality of it, how can I start to merge this into teaching young athletes, young dancers? How can I bring kind of these new exciting things that I'm learning in psychology? How can I start to apply that to my teaching?
In a practical sense.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really excited. So before we dive in, I want to share with everybody this journey and how you came into alignment with these principles.
Sure.
So, for those of you who haven't met Charlene has trained extensively in the Cecchetti method of ballet, jazz tap, contemporary, acrobatics, and street dance. So very well-rounded. The chameleon of dance.
I try to be. Yeah. I grew up as a comp kid. I grew up in the comp world, which really gave me a wonderful foundation. Most of what we did was a lot of technical. We did our ballet exams. I trained in jazz tap. Kind of had that as my foundation, and then started to explore more contemporary styles when I went over to Europe, and just got exposed to just a whole other world over there, and as well as street styles. I kind of started getting a lot more interested in that, especially after meeting my now husband, who comes from that background. Just that started to become super, super exciting for me, and I just really wanted to learn more about the history of those genres. Still learning and still exploring, but it's just again, it's all movement, it's all breath, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
And so to be able to kind of feel and to connect to different types of music, and then to be able to merge all of those styles, it's just fun. I still enjoy training. I still enjoy taking different types of classes when I can. But it's like I said, that whole comp world was just a really great base, obviously. Exactly. You kind of learn all of the things that you sort of need to support the rest of the journey. But yeah, still learning, forever a student. Mm-hmm.
Right, which I think when we talk about mastering an art, if you really truly, you have to stay humble and continue learning.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Which
for sure.
I want to talk about, because you did leave to go abroad to Europe, and then you trained and studied there for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then what you ended up doing was you started, you co-directed the Kinisi Dance Company, a jazz contemporary collective, and you were able to cast dancers from all over the world.
Yeah. That was it was a pretty exciting time. So I, like I said, I grew up in this comp world, and I feel like sometimes it can become this bubble, as I'm sure you know. And you know, I started teaching at a young age. I started, you know, assisting classes when I was 12, 13, and then I was teaching my own like little baby ballet classes when I was 15. And so I was always at the studio, you know, and always creative, always choreographing, like whether it was setting stuff for like our school talent shows or whatever it might be. You know, I had choreographed a couple solos for my sister and some of the younger students. So I was always teaching, and then it kind of got to a point where it was just a lot. Like I was up to like 30 classes a week. Wow. Yeah, it was a lot. And you know, I think at that age, I was just kind of like, no, I can do it. Like, let's just pump it out. And I definitely burnt out. It was like too much. Right. And it almost was like, you know what? Like, I'm over dance, which was heartbreaking, but at the same time, I think I really needed it. And so I was working in bars. I wasn't going to school, and my parents basically gave me an ultimatum, and they were like, you either need to go back to school, you either need to go back to teaching dance, or you're gonna start paying rent underneath our roof. Yes. So I was like, I'm out. I'm gone. You know, and I think it was that good kick in the butt to kind of like reignite something for me, because there was definitely something that was lacking and that was missing. And my father was born in Germany, so I was able to get a European passport. And I was like, okay, London. Like I really didn't have any kind of connection to Europe. I just was like, I want to get out of here. I want to go explore. London was the first place that came up for me. I had very, very distant relatives that were able to kind of give me a place to start out. Eventually kind of found my family, what ended up being my family in Kinisi Dance Company. You know, I was dating a guy at the time, and we were working in a bar, and he was just like, I don't understand why you're not dancing. Like, I don't understand why you're not using these skills and these tools that you have. I was taking classes like at Pineapple and, you know, just kind of starting to get myself back into the studio. And I applied for this teaching job with toddlers. And it just like running around with 2 and 3 year olds playing with ribbons and hula hoops. There was something so pure about that just like reignited that love of dance. The pure joy, like it was just the innocence of them just being in a place where they could just be free to move. And that really re-sparked that for me. And so I started teaching open classes at Pineapple, and just started connecting with people, and who ended up being my best friend and like my sister, Rachel Perry, who's about to have a baby right now. So Rachel, if you're watching, and we just kind of started this collective. We were basically like, we're cool, like let's start creating together, you know, like we can do something. We just enjoyed spending time together in the studio. And we just started kind of like running these classes. We were like, let's just do it. And, you know, we had people from Italy, Russia, Australia. You know, we had a couple Canadians as well. Just so many different people that had come to London to find something for themselves, very much sort of the same thing that I was like seeking for myself. And we ended up being so much more than just a dance collective. Like it ended up being, you know, a home away from home, a family away from our families. And it was a beautiful time. So we all just created together, you know, whatever platforms we could kind of find to perform at. We did it, and it was wonderful. You know, we trained together, we had our company classes every week, and regardless of kind of how big the gigs were that we did, it was just a really, really special time for us. We created this group, this family, and I think everyone has kind of like moved on and is kind of doing their own things, but the amount of messages, and you know, we all stay in touch, and we all kind of refer back to that time. It's like
that was like the golden moment.
And that time of growth, you know, that time of like really discovering who you are, and what are the things that really mean a lot to you. I think there's something about being away from your comfort zone that almost like forces you to like just dive in.
And so, you know, when I was looking at that, and I said, okay, when you can get into the competition world, and especially being in North America, and I find it can be, you know, what we're exposed to with World of Dance, and so you think you can dance, which, you know, the aesthetic can be very North American centric. And so when you get, especially this is before the time of all these shows. So by the time you go down there, and then you start to meet dancers who can speak different languages, who could have trained in these like very historical institutions, or street dancers with a different cultural twist. How did that, you know, influence your experience of breadth and musicality and choreography, you know, as it broadened your vocabulary? You know?
It really did, because, you know, back in the day, like contemporary in North America wasn't really like, it wasn't a thing. You know, like we didn't have contemporary categories
in competition. No, it was just jazz.
It was jazz, and like lyrical was probably, you know,
lyrical.
I was at a competition the other day. I was like, wait, what did we used to do? And someone was like, you were doing a 12-year-old lyrical solo. You know, so contemporary wasn't really like a thing that we had been exposed to, and so going over there, my eyes were definitely open to so many other types of movement. You know, there were so many wonderful institutions there, like a lot of the London universities were, you know, exploring Martha Graham. Like they were exploring those sort of historical bases that we touched on. Like we had a really wonderful modern teacher growing up. But yeah, I was definitely out of my element, like going into some of these classes where I was like, I've never done this before, you know, and so even just like you said, like the different types of music, and just being exposed to different techniques and different movement, I was very much out of my element, and became really frustrated at times. But like I said, you know, my friend that I met, that we began the company together, that was already kind of her world. Like she had gone to school, and that's sort of what she had studied already. And so she just kind of kept exposing me to it, being like, let's go to this class, like let's go to this class, you need to come to this person's class. And I think it just really opened my eyes and broadened my view of what movement is. You know, you kind of, again, like you can kind of get stuck in like what's trendy. You know, you see what you're exposed now to so many things on social media, to these wonderful shows that obviously bring dance to this amazing platform, and like, you know, so many people are interested in it now. However, you know, they're just like tiny little pieces, right? They're tiny little pieces. And so, you know, the culture over in Europe as well is like going to see shows, is, you know, being able to be exposed to so many different types of companies as well. Especially London being such a hub for, you know, different European cities to kind of come into. So I was definitely very, very inspired. Some of my favorite companies to watch were hip hop companies, you know, and like just being exposed to that different type of movement. I feel like that kind of influenced a lot of my style as well, which is why we kind of called it like a jazz contemporary company, to sort of leave a little bit of room for
whatever you wanted to play
whatever
with.
we wanted. Yeah, exactly. And so I just like to fuse a lot of different movement, and as I go along now, you know, just learning so much more about like historical jazz. You know, my husband danced with Decidedly Jazz Dance Works in Calgary, and you know, just his world opened up so much to like that historical genre. And now, as you know, he works with Collage Jazz, so like he's definitely bringing a lot of those different influences into our home and into our vibe. And so like just again, just like exploring, being inspired, and just researching different types of movement, you know, has really influenced a lot of what I like to do.
Right. Yeah. And I think that ensures the longevity, but just like sports, what people don't realize when say, okay, you're a dancer, and I find the dance world can be very ballet centric. Right. That ballet is the ultimate, and it's not true. I mean, I think the reason why it's just so easy to standardize it is because it has a standard vocabulary and a standard movement, but I mean, each style has its own aesthetic. But dance, what I say to everybody, is storytelling.
Dance
absolutely. Preceded words. And that's why, you know, your connection with the children to say, oh wow, there's no agenda here, we could just simply move, spark that that joy.
For sure. No, for sure. It's something that, you know, is just always going to be a part of my life. You know, you like with ballet, you know, it's like we say like that it is the foundation of all dance, and that's something that was kind of like drilled into me. And then, you know, in recent years, seeing and learning more about like what the history of jazz roots was, you know, what the history of like street styles, it was like, no, like that was, you know, that was very much happening very, very organically, like in the streets. And so, I think, you know, wherever you're kind of coming from, if you're movement based, if you're breath based, if, you know, movement and music brings you joy, it's like you can have all of it. You can have all of it, you know? Yeah, it's interesting. And so how would you say it bridges, you know, being able to be a multidisciplinary artist in the world of dance? And then how does it parallel the philosophy of yoga? I think like just knowing that, you know, there's that kind of bigger picture, that bigger force. Like now that I've kind of I've been practicing yoga for 15 years, maybe over that. And I think just being able to like transfer just like the passion that I had from learning everything that I did in the dance world, being able to kind of like bring that into the spirituality of moving with breath has been really great for me in the sense that like, okay, there's moments where like, you can be like up here and like moving and, you know, exploring as far as like the dance goes, but then there's a time where, you know, it's okay to like slow down. It's okay to like find stillness, you know? And I think that's something that I'm trying to kind of expose my kids to, my students to a little bit more, is that, you know, it's great. It's very, very great to be an elite athlete and be training the way that you're training and, you know, conditioning the way that you're conditioning. But what else can we do with it? You know, why are we doing it? You know, how can we kind of reconnect to that? And so that's kind of what I've been exploring more within my own yoga practice. Is, you know, yes, like the movement and, you know, how wonderful my body feels, but also the nourishment of my mind and being able to find that stillness and just reconnecting, grounding, and really just connecting to the breath. And I think that's something that, like, when I look back on it, I don't know that I was as exposed to that growing up. Like, it just wasn't.
It was just
really,
like do.
Yeah, which is cool, which is totally fine, because, you know, I gained so much from that. I gained so much discipline, but I think now, like, the mindfulness of yoga, of you know, body work and just being able to slow down, I think now more than ever it's super, super important, especially for young athletes, especially for, you know, the younger generation that's just like constantly go, constantly being bombarded with information. To be able to step away from that and just like be back in your body and just connecting to your breath. And I mean, you know, as far as like philosophies go, it's all that. It's all you know, finding that time to be still so that you have a chance to really kind of be exposed to yourself. And if that makes sense.
So for yoga, would you mean like in meditative practice of staying still, or in to be intentionally connected to self and breath even during movement?
I think during movement as well, you know, something that really took place for me during my training was, you know, I did my training through Modo, and so the series is, you know, it's a half a series, so you're not moving a lot, you're not flowing a lot. So it was a huge challenge for me, for somebody that's like, you know, I love going to like flow classes with music, like those power classes where you're just like going through it, you know, to kind of do 30 days, you know, two practices a day of hatha. It's like you're in those postures, you have nowhere to go but in, you know.
You know what? Now that you mentioned the style of yoga, it's true. I avoid hatha. I prefer Ashtanga and Vinyasa.
Totally.
For the very reasons that, not to say that it's bad, but for me, it's challenging. I think it's gotten better with time, but my entry point into yoga was hatha. And I hated it.
And you kind of like built up from there.
Because when you're dancing, if you're uncomfortable, at least there's repetitive movements, and you're hearing music, so you can go somewhere else. In the similar way that runners can just kind of listen to their playlist and go somewhere else. Or if there's no music, you can go somewhere because you're coming. But when you're holding something, like if you're in Uttasana, you're like there for like how long? And you're just like breathing through, and you just want to sit down. But that's part of it. Which transcended discomfort.
That's it. You know, those moments where you're like, or like you're in Warrior 2 and your teacher's like, we're just gonna stay here for 3 more breaths, and you're like, you're lying, we're staying here for 7 more breaths. I know where to go. So, you know, I think it's so interesting that you say that, because that's how I always kind of felt too. You know, we sort of say like, okay, hatha is a great way to sort of start, because you kind of learn the postures, you know, you become familiar with them, and then you can work your way up into a flow or a vinyasa where you kind of move through the postures a little bit more, which is amazing. You know, I love going to like a flow with like a great playlist, you know, they're super, super fun. Hatha is that ground, like it really just brings you right back down to the foundations again. And it's like you kind of just have to be in it, and you know, whatever kind of tends to come up are usually those things that like kind of get pushed aside a little bit, you know, with the busyness and with, you know, with all of the other things that are happening in your life. When you're kind of forced to like just stop and be still, that's when stuff comes up, you know, and that's the beauty of it. And so it's like, okay, well, how can you work through those things within the postures, which is like hatha is kind of a hard sell sometimes, right? Like especially when there's people like with our backgrounds that are like, no, I just want to move, you know. It's like, okay, well you can, but also how does it feel to be in your body when you're like shaking and you just want to get out of it?
That's right.
How does that feel? And why like your body is strong, you're here, you have that base, you have that foundation. So yeah, it is quite cool. Interesting. Yeah.
And it's great mental training for when you want to level up, because being able to be in there and to hold space in something uncomfortable,
for sure,
and transcend and bring that self-compassion, and then you finish your practice and you're like, wow, I did it, so that your move to Europe for 7 years is kind of that long hatha pose,
totally,
and then you came back to Toronto, and then you started collaborating with Miha, and so now you have your company together here, and you're an adjudicator, and then you started studying psychology at Ryerson.
Yeah.
So, what are your plans with your education in psychology, and how do you think you can bring that to the training to the dancers that you're influencing now?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah,
that's the big question, because it's something that I've always sort of been interested in. I never did any post-secondary education, so I graduated high school, started like teaching right away, full time. Went to Europe, that I kind of call that my like school. Education. That was like my my schooling. And then I came back, and I was teaching again. Miha and I started our company, and started to kind of just reintegrate back into like the Toronto dance community, which changed a lot since I left. So it was just like rediscovering and like networking again, and just finding our tribe over here. And so school was kind of one of those things that was always like in the back of my mind, and psychology was just the first thing that came up when I first graduated high school and was just doing the thing that everybody does, which is apply to university. I was applying for like family studies. I knew that I wanted to do something along these lines of like, trying to help people, trying to help understand people, or trying to, help people understand themselves a little bit more.
The last question I ask for everybody, and I know it's hard, okay? In one sentence, how do you embody momentum?
Yes, that is hard. In one sentence, I would say by staying grounded, by staying humble, and by working with intention to continue to move forward.
That's amazing. Thank you. See, you can do it. And you summarize it so nicely on how your journey, moving abroad to give yourself a break to Europe, being exposed and diversifying your movement vocabulary, and then coming to Toronto and layering in yoga and now psychology so that you can train and influence the next generation of dancers, I think is a great work. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, and I think it will be very useful for all these young dancers. You're kind of churning and grinding and be like, I don't know where the end of this is.
I hope so.
That there's so much depth and richness like just ahead of them.
There is. And the younger generation has some crazy things ahead of them, like what the facility and the tools and the skills that they have now, can just build so many magical things. I see so many wonderful things, if they can work with that intention. So
intention plus artistry is power. Yes, totally.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
So thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 12, the final episode of season 1 for Momentum Live. We will reconvene in the fall, and the replay will be up shortly. Check out drblessyl.com for all past episodes of this episode, and if you like it, please comment in the link. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again for tuning in.